we'll be moving on to our next presentation. I'm sure many people are very excited to be listening to Danny Firpo and Berto Mora of All of It Now, talking about their work in XR for broadcast and commercial projects. So we'll bring our next speakers in, please. Or should we take a minute? Okay, great. I just realized I was supposed to do a graphic hit, but we're just going to move on. So, hey guys, how are you?
Hey, how's it going?
Hey Laura, doing well.
I
How are
threw
you?
Chris a curveball because I can't read my own run of show, but that's what we do today. It's been a very long day for us. So my apologies to Chris and welcome to you guys.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Great. I will give you guys the room and we're looking forward to your presentation. So over to you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hey guys. So I think my screen is shared. And essentially this kind of topic is about broadcast and commercial projects, how to adapt and how to communicate using all of the in-person, remote, and telepresence tools that we have at our disposal. So that's kind of the beginning of it. We come from a lot of AR, XR, and kind of just virtual workflows, even pre-COVID. So we were in a really unique position to be able to kind of hit the ground running as soon as this kind of pandemic started, and having a. Oh, I'm so sorry. You should be able to see my screen. Let me try it one more time. I might have lost it there. Hey, there we go. That should do it there. So we kind of have had a history of adaptation in the company. It was founded in 2016. We started off as kind of a really a VJ company, essentially, being able to do small regional events. We quickly kind of expanded into experiential and generative media, really fell in love with GLSL, HLSL, and then quickly Notch, where we started in 2017 to kind of adopt and adapt Disguise and Notch into real-time tours, real-time experiential shows, real-time trade shows, and then also kind of scaling up to fixed installs and permanent installs and some lobby designs. In 2018, we started using it really early on for virtual production. And in 2019, content production and more generative content. And then in 2020, started to adapt more Unreal Engine into some of our virtual production projects. So with we've kind of made the joke in the company, with every successive year, we've kind of reinvented ourselves as a company in terms of what tools we use, what kind of projects and clients we work with and on. And it's an exciting place to be, but also, as one would expect, kind of stressful, because you're taking on new tools and you can't necessarily use the same ones that you've used the years past, because out of either boredom or necessity in some cases, where sometimes the tools that we used last year aren't available or aren't doing what we need them to do for a specific project. So it's continual challenge to adapt to new tools. So some quick case studies. Most notably, in 2019, we used a combination of Notch, Disguise, and Stipe to create some really impressive AR content for BTS's World Tour, which I believe is one of the first touring augmented reality, at the broadcast level kind of projects. That was a 2-camera setup using a handheld camera and a pedestal camera, a camera on a tripod, to create some kind of dynamic content that was adapting to the operator and adapting to the talent in real time. Berto can maybe speak more about this one and kind of what he learned, and how we were able to use some of these tools to, and most importantly, convince people early on that it was viable. Go ahead, Berto.
Yeah, so I've been really interested in tracking even before augmented reality, before 2008, and as I started doing more real-time content, I really got more into augmented reality, and luckily at All of It Now, we were able to adapt the technology So in this piece here, we use Notch to design all of the graphics for the AR moments. They have an amazing particle generation tool that worked really, really well for all the particle stuff that BTS wanted on their tour. Alongside, we were using the Stipe tracking system, Red Spy. You can see in the lower left image, we're calibrating it there at night. This is actually probably the worst case scenario because we actually had to map the stage as they were building this giant pop-up logo that came out of the ground. So it was very, very complicated and stressful to do this job. And the one piece of technology that puts all this together is the Disguise media server. And within Disguise, we're able to pipe in multiple different types of tracking systems or data, specifically the Stipe HF protocol or FREED. This is used to get camera intrinsics into the Disguise media server. Once we have that, they've actually built a really nice pairing of using Notch as a layered graphics engine within the system. So once you get everything inside of Disguise, you're able to kind of marry everything together and kind of get your augmented reality working. One of the amazing things I think about Disguise is that it allows you to previs a lot of this stuff. So we've used it a lot to kind of show augmented reality previs. This is fairly new. I mean, we've had previs for shows for a very long time where they have lights and stages and screens. But now, in this situation, we had to figure out a way to pre-visualize augmented reality graphics in real world scale. So currently today, Disguise is one of the most useful tools to do that that we use within all of it now. But yeah, so 3 pieces of technology and a lot of beta software to get this going, and very happy to all the partners that believed in these ideas and allowed us to get to this point. Very thankful. But yeah, I'll pass it on to Danny here.
Yeah, I mean, kind of what Berto was talking about, the previs tool in this project especially was so useful because I think about halfway through the first leg of the tour, they wanted to make some changes to the content with the content team, primarily Kevin Zhu, essentially working from the office and being able to push updates to Neil Carmen, who is the touring engineer for this project. Who was able to kind of make changes, previs them in D3, send exports to the client, and then get approvals so that Kevin could essentially push the updated Notch file to Neil. And even pre-COVID, when you could be in the same room, there are times when you can't still. And so being able to kind of use those previs tools were really essential and able to, in terms of not having to fly a content person, Kevin, out to each show or to the next show in order to make those changes on site. Is why we continue to use Disguise, and was something that we're able to really use effectively. Moving along, another project that we got to do this year was work on America's Got Talent season 15 with an incredible team. With Scott from DMD Studios being the on-site XR screens producer, and the DMD Studios team worked extremely diligently right alongside us in terms of bringing, I think, 14 different XR environments that we, Excite Labs, and Gravity all worked tirelessly to produce. The project timeline for some of these things were I think less than 5 days from getting the creative direction to creating Unreal environments and then delivering them to Scott and Florian to essentially implement and program over the weekend to essentially shoot the following week. So it was, and essentially repeating that process for 2 months of just nonstop work. And so that was an exercise in remote communication, because at this point this was peak COVID, and there weren't any rehearsal times were kind of always had the looming COVID shadow of don't stand too close to each other, don't hand each other equipment because cross contamination, don't you can't have too many people in a room, you can't have talent on site during, except for more than 20 minutes during their rehearsal period. It was just kind of creatively the worst case scenario in terms of what the project required. And Berto was on site as well, along with Jay Spriggs, who were working with Scott and Florian on the first 2 weeks of calibration and initializing the project and getting it off the ground. And some of the results were incredible. We had in some scenes, I think 1,500 DMX virtual fixtures, which were essentially being controlled by DMX and then rendered live in real time as an environment. In some scenes, we had essentially 3 scenes in one. We also had some virtual camera moves that Berto had created to essentially artificially move the world around the camera, because the camera was relatively fixed in 3D space, whereas the world essentially wasn't. And so in doing some really clever tracking fakery, world creation, using an incredible template by Florian to essentially be able to block out shots across 3 different tracked cameras in advance, working with the creative team, Harriet and Brian from the kind of Psycho Studios team or Psycho Entertainment team, and they were able to essentially work with us in live Unreal design meetings where we were essentially updating content with them, kind of virtually looking over our shoulder, making changes and seeing why we couldn't do things and why we had to do things a certain way. So it was an incredible experience in terms of making some incredible work in an incredibly short amount of time with people that were working tirelessly with us, alongside us and virtually around the world, to be able to put this show together. One of the key marks of adaptation here was that because we had so little actual time to put each episode together, we needed to have a team that was able to work around the clock, but also around the world, in order to make the most of every single day. So in some cases, we had team members, scattered throughout the planet, who were able to use a version control system that we essentially created for this, using GitLab, so that we could break the project up into its component chunks of, okay, this designer is going to work on this part of the world, this designer is going to work on another part of it, and essentially be able to merge that project file at the near the end of the project, but also working kind of in parallel, so they could pull changes and push changes to each other and see those updates, not necessarily in real time, because oftentimes they were one was working while another was sleeping, but essentially see the results of those updates without having to download the entire project file each time, which made for a much more flexible and less rigid process. And in some cases, some of these project files were 20 gigabytes in size, so having to manually zip, upload, and re-download that project file each and every day, or many times in a day, would have been honestly untenable. We would not have been able to get it done in the allotted time. So this was a project that really required us to kind of fire on all cylinders. And quite honestly, this was our first time using version control at this scale. And it was kind of a let's kind of build the plane as we fly kind of experience in some cases, because nobody had flown a plane like this before.
Even using Unreal Engine, right? Like, we've used Unreal Engine on smaller projects, and nothing to this scale. And it was something I've been wanting to do for a very long time. And we finally adopted Unreal Engine this year, and we had it. We instantly put it on America's Got Talent. We're like, yeah, let's just do it, right? We're very confident in everything we do, and it is scary when you haven't done it. But like everything, for me, I usually tell everyone is, if it's not beta, I'm not going to use it. So give me the beta, anyways.
Yeah, it was a risk on kind of all parties, where it was still very much on the disguise side, a beta. For Unreal, not so much a beta, but it's a continual work in progress. But for AGT, this was their first time ever using something like this, and we have seen it in other shows, and I think one of the biggest differences is that this screen was, I think, the first curved screen that it was used for, and I think 60 feet wide, 20 feet tall, and an LED floor. It had a reflective floor, which we learned later was not the best experience because for those who are familiar with the calibration process in XR, it poses challenges, and then creatively also poses challenges because you essentially have an always reflective environment. So suddenly, if you make grass, your grass becomes reflective, and that's always a little bit weird. So it forced the creative to kind of adapt to the environment and essentially use floor surfaces as in environments that are always kind of naturally reflective. So a lot of water floors, a lot of kind of water or marble or just shiny reflective floors that we can that can forgive that aspect. But yeah, that's kind of AGT a little bit, and some definitely a difficult project that we learned a lot from, and are continuing to be able to kind of adapt in other ways. So why is communication so important? Now that so much of a project is done remotely, the creative shorthand between teams is really compromised. And in some teams and departments, some terms can mean different things to different teams and different departments. So language can really matter there. And in XR, teams and systems are more interconnected than ever before. Audio is feeding video, is feeding lighting, and tracking is can be feeding all those different systems. So making sure that nothing is being left to another department when it wasn't expected is really, really important. And then also, given that we're in a time of COVID, and at this point in time, peak COVID, on-site time is both expensive, limited, and potentially dangerous. So it's in everybody's interest to spend as little time on set as possible, but at the same time, that is a challenge because these things do take time. So we're always at this kind of tug of war between risk, expense, and the need to develop, and continue to develop creative. As far as communication, planning, creative tools, we've all seen these before, but just kind of throwing them out there for those who are looking for more tools. We've adapted F-Track most recently, and for larger scale projects and projects requiring reviews, it's an incredible tool for both planning and using it as a review tool for your clients, and it works really, really well and with some the other elements and project management tools and platforms. Kind of let's work through a project really quick. We kind of have 10 different phases that we've broken out here. Something to consider is that these are all the phases of a project where something can go wrong. I mean, the 10th less so, but this is why communication is so important, is that at any point in time, you have kind of you have variables to kind of juggle. And so we have like kind of the initial contact, the hey, how's it going? We'd like to work with you guys. The discovery phase, what are we trying to do? The pitch phase, what are we doing? The budgeting phase, how much does it cost? The pre-production phase, how do we build these things in a way that makes sense? The production phase, let's build the thing and figure out what we're doing. The revision phase, we need to make changes based on budget, time, or changing creative, which often happens. The panic phase, where a client ultimately says, I know that we told you to do this thing, but now we don't want to do this thing anymore. And how do we adapt what we've built already? Then the on-site phase, now that we're on site, let's just come to terms with the fact that we need to get this done in a really limited amount of time with a constantly ticking clock. And then the debrief phase, we've done it, it's great. Let's talk about what went wrong, what went right, and so that we can learn from our mistakes, because clients need to be able to learn from their mistakes and be able to do something better next time. It's really, really essential. So kind of breaking through, some of these things. And the pre-production kind of, this is where the most important part is communication, being able to work with multiple teams so that there aren't any surprises in production. And signal flow documents save time and save lives. The number of times that I can point to a signal flow document, show an engineer, and then instantly understand why they need a line run from front of house to backstage, just saves hours of explanation. And then also communication with clients. This is the expectation management phase more often than not, which is, or ideally in the communication phase before that. But if you haven't done, if you're not saying XR can't do that in a conversation, something literally might be wrong, where a client might be expecting that it can do a thing and just kind of taking it for granted. And so this is why you want to make sure that you're communicating with your clients and communicating with your designers too, and your on-site staff to make sure that what is being proposed can actually be done. I have said XR can't do that. I think at least 10 times in a project, because it's new to a lot of people, and it's ever changing. So that even if you do know what it can do last month, it might have changed, and that is kind of part of this whole machine that we're building and that we're a part of at this point. That we have to kind of learn as we go and be okay with that. And most importantly, planning and shot blocking is so critical to success in a project, and being able to say, okay, the camera's going to do this, and we're not going to run into problems, or maybe we are going to run into problems, and here's why. And so with that, I'm going to pass it back to Berto, who's going to essentially kind of run us through what a shot blocking session in Disguise and over a Zoom call, much like this one here, what that would look like and how we can kind of solve problems and identify potential obstacles or hurdles.
So I'll share my screen here. I know we're very limited on time right now, so I'll make this super quick, unfortunately. But anyways, I'm hoping that you guys can see my screen here.
Yep.
Yep, you can see it. Awesome. Cool. So this is Disguise here, and what you're seeing in the image is Unreal Engine. Right now it's really slow. I'm running Unreal and Disguise on my laptop with Zoom. So one of the cool things about Disguise is, you can, build your screens or have your screen layouts. Currently we have two. We have a curved screen and a floor screen. And what we're able to do here is we're able to kind of visualize how our scene's going to look from different perspectives of the actual scene. So one of my favorite tools, or one of my favorite features currently right now, is that Disguise has time code control of Unreal. So I can actually program things in Unreal and run the Disguise timeline and actually affect those graphics. So I just did a really quick keyframe here where when I'm running through the timeline, you can kind of see these keyframes of the car kind of zooming in or coming in. So all these things can, you can do a lot of these pre-animated shot blocking test here. So maybe you have a camera over here and you want to make sure that you see that car. So within the system, you either can see, you can either decide to position this the scene differently or bring the car more forward, or maybe you decide that maybe the camera has to be closer to the screen, and then based on that, you get to decide what is in frame and what is in shot. So very quick, I mean, there's a lot more to this, but as you guys can see right now, you see my scene, you see the camera moving. Usually this camera would be controlled by a Stipe tracking system, but right now I'm just controlling with my mice. Yeah, so.
What a great example is that telephone pole. So, you can kind of see that in right around here. So for example, if we needed to be closer, or if we're right here, for example, there's literally a telephone pole in the middle of your shot. So if this were the camera position and we said, hey, we wanted to move left or right, first of all, we can actually tell where the camera is based on our camera position and say, okay, well, we can't be at this position for this shot because it's going to create a blockage. And so these are kind of the things that you can now go back into your Unreal project file and say, all right, well, we need to either move or remove this telephone pole because it's gonna create a problem for us on site. or in some cases that we ran into with AGT, we had a camera that was really, really close to the floor, essentially on the ground plane. And so we had foliage that was essentially blocking the camera in our early load-ins, and essentially because we were able to test these cameras not just in disguise but also in Unreal, it allowed us to remove foliage before we got onto on-site, and the designers could say, oh, this this little bollard thing or plant that is in the scene needs to be moved or removed, and to not have to deal with that on site is a huge thing. So yeah, as an example here, the bushes here that Berto is playing with, that could be really problematic. That could be great. Your director could say, I love this. This is so cool. I can shoot through the bushes like I would in a real environment. Or this is extremely distracting and we need to remove it. To be able to find that out, casually in a Zoom conversation that we're finding here, is great, because it's a couple of mouse clicks for a designer, but once you're on site and you need to make those changes across 3, 4, or 6 different machines, and you need to make those in seconds, makes for an extremely stressful experience for your on-site operator, and something that you want to avoid whenever possible. So that's kind of a really, really quick, and apologies for the kind of the speed of this demonstration, but just want to stress how important it is to do that kind of shot blocking. I think that's mostly it for our, just to leave some time open for Q&A. Any other parting thoughts, Berto?
No, I think that is all. Very exciting stuff. I wish I had more time, but yeah, that's kind of what we have for this short presentation.
Yes, it's a lot to dig into in a short amount of time, so I really appreciate you guys rushing through, covering so much really important material. I'll remind everyone watching, this video will be available at the Framework website later this week. So you can easily step through, I think, some really important details in the presentation deck, notes that you'll want to take about the presentation production process and working clients. I think people are going to want to go in and grab those frames for their own notes, as well as seeing some of the demo material and have time to review that. Since we are short of time for questions, I hope I can encourage you guys to hang out and hop in and create a little session environment where you can interact with the attendees and answer their questions there. So after we finish this presentation, we have one more presentation to go, and then we go into our social hour, and that's where people can set up their own chat environments to talk about different projects. So I encourage you to join us at Hopin and answer attendee questions. We'll try and sneak one in before this half hour is up, because I think it speaks to something everyone's really curious about. Herrick Goldman from New York posted this question before Berto even mentioned that he only uses beta software. So he had written, it seems like folks are happy to use beta level software. How do you communicate that to your client, and what's the backup plan?
The backup plan is usually I hope it works. I mean, usually, and Danny can speak more to this because he communicates more with clients, but usually, a lot of this stuff is seen online. A lot of the clients come to us and say, like, we want to do this. Obviously, we talk to them about it and we let them know that, hey, this might have been done in a controlled environment where it could just be either post-production or they finessed it in without having to do it real time. So Danny can speak a little bit more about this than I can, but usually we let the client know that, hey, this is beta, things break and don't work, but let's do it.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of it is. Oh, sorry. Was someone talking?
No, it's fine. I was going to ask, have you guys ever read a client and been like, no, this person, they say they want it, but they're actually not going to be happy with either the degree of risk, or they're not going to be flexible enough to respond when
Absolutely
things get sticky on show site?
There, in many ways that clients pick their studios have to sometimes pick their clients. And in some cases, we will, if a client is expecting perfection out of a beta, is honestly a red flag to us to say, hey, either, this is very much a work in progress. This is a beta. There are going to be bugs, and we're going to be able, we luckily happen to have an incredible support team and support network that we can work with, but there will be issues that we cannot necessarily solve now or overnight, and there are often creative solutions to those problems. Either it's asset replacement, or it's doing parts of it as rendered content, or finding creative ways to remove some of the GPU performance or overhead that's needed for some of these things, or in some extreme cases, kind of having a second platform kind of ready to go to say, okay, well, if we can't do it in Notch, we can do it in Unreal. If we can't do it in Unreal, we can do it in Notch. And that is sometimes why we charge a little bit extra in some projects that are at the upper bounds of that beta curve, where we have to build in some contingency for clients, and build in some contingency for us to be able to create that plan B approach for, in the absolute worst case scenario that something does go wrong, that we have a solution for it, instead of just kind of with our hands in our pockets hoping that nobody notices. But it is, definitely a matter of intestinal fortitude, and being able to mention that to clients, and say, hey, we're not promising perfection, but we strive for it with every project. And the most clients that are willing to do that will accept the fact that it's not. And if they don't, then sometimes we actually choose not to work with them, or we try to steer them away from this approach and say, well, there's other ways to accomplish what you want to do. This might not be the one for it.
Yeah, and just to add real quickly,
I'm sorry, guys. We're going to have to jump ahead to the next session. I know you have a lot more to contribute today, so I encourage you to hang out with us in post social hour. We're going to have to keep going. So thanks, guys. We're really happy to have you here.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.
All right.